Good morning. Happy Sunday, everyone. We're back for week 3 of DFS NFL. Seems like we know quite a bit going into this week, but we really don't know anything, if you want to be honest here. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for showing up. Like I said, we're going to be discussing week 3. I've got up here the matchups for week 3. Very interesting. Right off the bat here, what we're going to see. We've got 3 games with a total of 50 or more, but what really stands out this week is no team is more than a touchdown favorite. Philly at -6.5 is the biggest. We've got Minnesota -6, Cincinnati -6, Kansas City -5.5. So there's quite a bit going on there. We've also got quite a bit going on in terms of injuries here as well. Just a couple that I posted in chat earlier. We're waiting for some more news on some, but we've got Alvin Kamara is expected to play. Gabe Davis is going to play. Jerry Jeudy is going to play. J.K. Dobbins is going to make his season debut after practicing in full for 2 weeks here. So that's a little bit of a boost to the Baltimore run game. James Conner's a game time decision. Christian Watson for Green Bay is not expected to play, but Randall Cobb is in. Jacoby Myers for New England is out. I posted that earlier, and what I did there was I jumped on the Baltimore -2.5 line before that line jumped up. Possibly might jump up to 3.5 by game time. But what I did see was I got it at -109. That ended up jumping up to already -125 on the juice. And I think before that juice jumps up any higher, I think that line's going to probably go to 3.5 there. We've got Leonard Fournette expected to play. Gage and Perryman are going to be in for Tampa Bay as well, while Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are out. Cole Beasley is also activated from the practice squad. So he doesn't have a lot of practice time, so I'm not expecting him to get fully involved with Tampa Bay here today. It's more of a wait and see for me on him. I'm not going to have any exposure to him in my lineups. I do like Scotty Miller. I'll talk about some value plays here shortly. For Detroit, Swift and Hawkinson are going to be in. So that's a little bit of news. For anyone that is maybe new to our Discord, to our Jaeger Bombs Fantasy Sports, I'm Chris Durrell. I also work for Daily Fantasy Sports Rankings, Fanshare Sports. So make sure to check those sites out. You can head over to patreon.com/JaegerBombs. For $10 a month, you can get a copy of our NFL cheat sheet and all of our NFL tools, access into our Discord for, like I said, $10 a month. If you play more than one sport, for $20 a month, you can get access to all of our content. We're currently running about 10 plus sports. You can also come in and check out our Discord for free. We're running MLB free for the month of September, so you can get in and get that for free. You can get our Jaeger Bomb Sportsbook where all our bets are posted, winning picks. You can talk to our members, see how they like things. We've got NHL and NBA coming up, but you can get into our Discord for free. I will drop that link here. Just give me 2 seconds and I will give you that free trial link in the chat. Happy Sunday, Chad. How's it going? Skol Vikings wore the full purple hat today. Hopefully we get a bounce back after Monday Night Football disaster, we'll just call it. We'll just go there and call it a disaster right off the bat. But I think we get a bounce back today. I do like that game for a game stack. There are a couple games that I do like that I think we can game stack. 3-3-JB. Happy Football Sunday to you as well. Bob, thanks for popping in. Appreciate it. And as always, Mike was first in chat with the morning fellas. Morning to you, Mike. Okay, so we got the free trial to our Discord up there. If you scroll up to the very top, you can also get access. You can see there's a link there to get in and grab that patreon.com/JagerBomb/NFL to get your monthly subscription. That's also now scrolling down on the ticker at the bottom. Okay, so we got some people in here, so let's just start talking about some football. So first of all, like I said, what we see kind of is a lot of close spreads, some high totals, some very low totals, but there are some chalky plays. One thing I added to the sheet this week with my new role with Fanshare Sports, we mentioned earlier that Dane and myself, mostly Dane so far, was handling the PGA ownership model over at Fanshare Sports. I have actually taken over on the NFL side of things, the curation, and eventually into the ownership model as well. But for this week, I worked on the curation, so I've gone through hundreds upon hundreds of articles, videos, podcasts, tweets, players, just to get those player mentions up there, those ones that you see. And I'm going to kind of pop that up here. So as you see these tags for these players, that's every time I go in, find a player mentioned, either good or bad. So that's where those come from, and that's kind of how that works. Now, the ownership model, that doesn't necessarily mean how the ownership is going to work for FanShare. It also accounts for, the last this season, the last 2 weeks of ownership that players have had. It also accounts for game totals and a whole bunch of other things go into it, but it definitely centers around those tags and that sentiment rating, which you can find over here. So the sentiment is just, is that a good tag? Is that a bad tag? That kind of goes into the start sit kind of information there. So what we see right off the bat, and I wanted to show, is just some of the most popular players. And you can find this on the cheat sheet as well. We can see over on the bottom, if you go to FanShare Sports tags, I'm not going to have ownership projections up here. To get that, you're going to have to head over to FanShare Sports. And if you use our promo code Jaeger, you'll get 20% off your subscription there as well. But for now, you can see the tags, which is going to correlate a lot to the ownership. So as we see, David Montgomery has been the most tagged player. Like every single article I go into, it's David Montgomery, David Montgomery, David Montgomery. The price is right. First of all, really like the price on him. He's got a good matchup versus Houston. So if we go and we look at that over here and we scroll down, find that Chicago game here. Chicago's rushing offense is much better than their passing. Go figure. 9th in rushing, 32nd. Now, on the flip side, Houston is 25th in rushing defense and have allowed the 25th most fantasy points to running backs. So that combined with Montgomery's price down here, still in the sub 6K range, is going to make him popular despite that over-under of only 39. I think he's going to get upwards of 20 touches again here today. So I think he's going to be one of the chalkiest players in the slate for sure. For cash games, I think that's a near lock. I don't like to call anyone a lock, but pretty close to a lock there. So we're going to have to look at him for cash. Now, to be different in GPPs, which we'll talk about here in a bit, you can definitely make some pivots off of that. But I want to talk some cash games and popular plays first. Obviously, we've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. His price has gone up, but he is probably still underpriced for just how good he has been. It's 8 or 9 straight games with 8 or more receptions. I think he scored a touchdown in 6 straight games. He faces a Minnesota defense that has been very weak in the secondary. He's going to be popular today. Jalen Hurts, most popular quarterback. So there's your 3 most popular players at those positions. Tight end, Tyler Higbee, and Kyle Pitts, actually. Kind of surprising. A lot of the tags for Kyle Pitts ended up being positive. I think a lot of people like the matchup for Atlanta this week against Seattle. Atlanta spent the whole week in Seattle, which is always a good thing when you're going across country, not just kind of going the day before type thing. They're avoiding all the, the distractions at home. If you're looking into those kind of narratives, Atlanta, I think, is in a good spot here. Probably going to end up being on my bet card as well. DC, I will get to your question just here in a second. I know you're asking about Dobbins. I just want to finish going through some of these popular plays. Leonard Fournette, like I said, is going to play. Looks like he's going to be popular this week, especially with Evans and Godwin out. Green Bay is a week. We'll go over and look at that matchup here. This is an afternoon game. Green Bay's rushing defense, is 30th in the league. Tampa Bay's rushing offense hasn't been great. They're only 23rd right now, but I think they're going to rely on a little bit more today, especially with Godwin and Evans both out. So I think he's going to be popular. Justin Jefferson, very expensive. Now, the Cousins-Jefferson stack, I don't think it's going to be as popular as the tags maybe show here, just because when we look at this slate, at the quarterback position especially, we've got all the big boys on here. We've got Allen, we've got Lamar Jackson at New England, we've got Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. I think just with the combination of those 4 right there taking up some ownership, especially Hurts and Josh Allen, that I don't think Cousins, if the price was maybe more down in the sub 6,500 range, but if you do feel that ownership projection is going to get up there for Cousins, that may be a spot you want to fade. So there is some leverage in that game as well. So if you think Cousins and Jefferson are going to be high owned, you want to leverage off in maybe a game stack. Dalvin Cook is a great choice. I don't think he's going to be super high owned today. Looking at the running back position, we got Jonathan Taylor against KC in a high total game. Pittman's back, but I think Taylor's going to be popular. I think Christian McCaffrey is going to get popular as well. You've got Austin Eckler, who could see some extra usage with Justin Herbert either hurting, not 100%, or possibly even out. Joe Mixon's going to be popular. We talked about Leonard Fournette being popular. We talked about David Montgomery being popular. So I don't think Dalvin Cook's going to get too high on. That's maybe a leverage spot in a very high total game. 6-point home favorite. Dalvin Cook could be a leverage spot there off of Cousins and Jefferson. All right. Do we like Dobbins at single-digit ownership? Well, I went ahead and bet Baltimore today at the -2.5. I do think they win this game. It is definitely a GPP play with some upside. We know he's going to be healthy because he's been practicing in full for 2 weeks. They just kind of seemed like they wanted to make sure that he was going to be a full go, full 100% health before they got him back in, coming off that injury from last year. Sat out the whole entire year with that. I think it was ACL. It was one of the CLs, I believe. So I think that is a good, if you're going to get him at 2 to 5% ownership in GPPs, I think that is another good pivot. What do we got him here at price? He's right down here. I think McKissick might even be more popular than him, just with Washington probably in a trailing game script here. I think he could see some. Michael Carter's getting mentioned a lot here as well. So Damien Pierce even. So I think Dobbins, you're right, with a low ownership. They're going to be a favorite in this game. We know he's got the talent. It's just whether he's going to be healthy. So again, not cash, but GPP, I think I can get there for sure. Fournette looking close to 30%. Yeah, Fournette's going to be popular for sure. Okay, so Robert asks, Chris, in my cash lamps, I have Allen Robinson in for wide receiver. Not really a cash wide receiver for me today. He only showed it 1 week, one really bad week, one really good week. I don't think I'm there for cash on him. I could see it. It's a game where I do like Matt Stafford. In this game, Kupp's always going to be there as their number one. Higbee is the number two. I'd rather have Higbee than Robinson myself. But you got Goddard in there. I'm fine with Goddard too. I like him as well. In cash, I'm probably not running Robinson and Higbee together. I'd rather have Higbee myself. He leads. I think he's second in targets among all tight ends. I think he's leading in yards among all tight ends. So that's where I'm putting him in. Yeah, the optimizer put him in. That's fine if you're running an optimizer. It's just me personally. I would rather have Higbee over Allen Robinson myself. There's other cheaper value wide receivers where I feel like I'm going to take a shot today rather than Allen Robinson in that game is probably your number 3 option in the passing offense for the Rams. I'm getting all hopped up on Mountain Dew here. All right. So moving on, I'm just kind of jumping around here a little bit, just kind of answer the questions that come in, talk about some ownership. I did talk about some pivots here. Now, one of my favorite, obviously we're going to see ownership with Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. Again, I'm unsure on Cousins. I know he's been really high tagged. A lot of people are talking about him as a value quarterback today. So if that's the case and he's going to be high owned, there's your 3 highest owned quarterbacks. Probably even throw Matt Stafford in there against an Arizona defense. I believe, they're 31st in fantasy points to quarterbacks. It's a fairly high total game, 4th or 5th in terms of game total. Looks like it's going to be a close game here as well. So those are going to be your chalk guys. One guy that I think that is going to be lower owned with huge upside that I am building probably in my 20 max, the $3 20 max or whatever they call it. I think I'm going to have quite a bit of, maybe even upwards of 40%. I'm definitely heavier than the field for sure, is Patrick Mahomes. We know his upside. It's the 3rd highest total on the slate. He's throwing 73% completion rate right now. He's number 1 and tied for number 1 with Josh Allen in touchdowns. He doesn't give you that rushing. And that's kind of where, you got Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts. They're all rushing quarterbacks. Especially Lamar, and Hurts. But all 3 of them give you that nice floor. So for cash games, I wouldn't go there with Mahomes. But I feel if he's going to be half the ownership of these other 3, probably in the, I don't even want to guess, but probably in the 10% range, maybe even less. If you can get less on that on Mahomes and Kelsey are one of my favorite stacks on the day for GPP formats because I believe the upside is ginormous. Well, we know it is. Indy, looking at their defense here, let's just go have a little peek at KC at Indy. The number 3 passing offense versus the number 29 passing defense. And this is in terms of DVOA, a little bit of mix of passing yards per game and stuff in there as well. They are also So where Indy has been good is limiting the points, fantasy points, because they're 16th and 10th to wide receivers, but they're 28th against tight ends. So if I'm using Mahomes, most of my Mahomes stacks today are going to include Kelsey for sure. With Shaq Leonard, kind of out. He was one that kind of covered some tight ends. He was quite well. 28th in fantasy points, 2 tight ends. That is a high upside. And what that's going to get you away from is obviously leveraging off the quarterbacks, but it also leverages you off these top wide receivers that are going to be popular. You got Kupp and Jefferson. I don't think Adams or Chase are going to get very high owned today just because you got Diggs, who is massively underpriced. There's no way that Stephon Diggs should be 7,700, even 8,300 on FanDuel when he is right there in terms of touchdowns, receiving yards, targets as Kupp and Jefferson, even Devontae Adams. Like all these guys are pretty close in terms of targets, as you can see here. Diggs is second in receptions, 87% catch rate, so he's got a huge floor, 270 yards, is only second to Tyreek Hill. He leads them all in touchdowns, 34% target percentage on Buffalo. There's no way he should be 7,700. He's probably going to be your highest owned wide receiver today. Diggs and Allen are probably going to be a very popular stack, along with Jefferson and Cousins. I'm going on and on about this leverage. For GPPs, I love making stacks, and I will have Josh Allen Diggs stacks, Josh Allen and Gabe Davis, that sort of thing. I will also have some Cousins and Jefferson, but I always like looking for that leverage in GPPs just to be a little bit different, especially in these very large field GPPs. I think you really do have to separate, making like a 2v2 switch out, even sometimes a 3v3, which really separates you. Now, I don't mean go and take a shot on a guy that's, going to get you zero or, doesn't really give you a whole bunch of upside. I like looking in that same range as those high price guys that are going to give you the same upside. So Kelsey and Mahomes, I think, are going to be low, and they're going to leverage off of the high-owned, high-priced wide receivers, as well as those quarterbacks that we talked about as well. Josh Jacobs, I'm almost to the point where I'm going to fade him. It was originally talked he wasn't even going to take the flight, and then he took the flight. He was very questionable. He's still not guaranteed he's going to be in, but if he took the flight, I'm assuming that he's going to get out there. He's probably going to try it out in warm-ups and see where that goes. It's tough. I love the price. I love the matchup, but if he's not 100%, I'm really on rebounding. If I'm going Las Vegas today, and I'm not going to have a ton of Carr, but I do want to have a lot of Adams. Again, I think Adams is kind of a nice leverage play, just like Travis Kelce is off of Kupp, Jefferson, Stephon Diggs. And then also, if you want to jump over, I think Darren Waller at tight end as well. So I'm going to have some Carr stacks, not as much as I had last week, crash and burn. But I think, just because of the perception of people that coming off of last week, it burned you with not just Carr. It was more Adams that I'm thinking about here that burned everyone. He was like one of the most highest owned wide receivers. I think he's obviously in a good bounce back spot against Tennessee. Jacobs, though, I guess you could take a GPP shot. I think he's going to be a little bit higher owned than we think. He was mentioned a lot throughout the week until this injury news came. And then if he's going to play, I think people are just going to naturally go back to him because of that price. Where was he here in price? Give me just a second. We'll find that. 5,400. Yeah, so that's a really good price. And there's not really a lot of running backs down in this area that I'm really, really high on. So another pivot, I'll just kind of bounce this, keep going off this here. If you want to get away from the Josh Allen Diggs stacks in that same game, kind of the way I talked about with Cook, I think we can do that with Devin Singletary. If Devin Singletary gets in the 80 plus yards and 1 to 2 touchdowns, while say Josh Allen is just kind of average in terms of points per dollar because he's the most expensive quarterback, and Diggs doesn't get the touchdown today and less than 100 yards, say, is just average again as well, which his price is nice. But if you want to get away from that, I think Devin Singletary makes a good GPP pivot, and that high-owned game is a Buffalo favorite in a potential shootout as well. And then I like running, if you want to run that back, same like we talked about with Cooks, possibly Cooks running back with Amon-Ra St. Brown, maybe TJ Hawkinson. On the Buffalo-Miami game, Devin Singletary, and then you could run that back with both Waddle and Tyreek Hill. I think you could possibly even throw Tua in there and just do a four-player stack if you wanted. That's just going to make you a little bit different as well. But the two games I like stacking the most in terms of game stack where I'm going to fit 3 to 4 players from that game. Buffalo, Miami, Detroit, and Minnesota. Those are my 2 favorite game stacking games today. But back to Jacobs, I think maybe a GPP shot, but I will be lower on the field if I do happen to get him in there today. Miles Sanders, again, if we want to look at running backs, pivoting low-owned running backs who have upside in games with some high totals. He is also a favorite against Washington. Washington's run defense is 31st in the league, and they are, where are we here? 30th against the running back in terms of fantasy points per game. So I love that pivot. If Hurts is going to be high owned, maybe Sanders gets in there and steals 2 touchdowns. Hurts doesn't get his touchdowns today. Hurts only gets like, say, 200 passing yards, maybe 40, 50 rushing yards, which is a nice floor, but it's not a GPP upside. Maybe Sanders explodes for 80 plus yards, 1 to 2 touchdowns, kind of like we talked about with Singletary and Cook. Now with Singletary and Sanders, they're both a lot cheaper, so they don't need as much as Cook to get there. So there's a little bit less risk, but I believe the upside is both there and the leverage / low ownership on those. So definitely like that there. Yes, so if you're in our Discord, you get in for free. You're an NFL member, an All Sports member. You can go to our hashtag NFL News channel. Yep, Josh Jacobs will play. So that's good. To see that he's playing, what are we, an hour and a half out here? So we're going to start seeing a lot of these inactives, actives lists start coming in here. So I do like that, seeing that he's going to play. It's nice to know. I'm just going to be a little bit less in the field. All right, so moving on, talked about some high-owned plays, talked about some leverage plays. I'm going to talk a little bit more about wide receiver like we talked about at the top. I like kind of, if you want real low ownership, I think Jamar Chase here is going to be real low owned. I thought Burrow was going to be low owned today. Cincinnati's offense has just really struggled in terms of protecting him, so he just hasn't had those explosive plays. Also, in the first 2 weeks, he has seen a lot of too high coverage, too high safety, so that's just really teams going off the film of last year, seeing what they like to do with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase in those big plays downfield. Teams have limited those. Now, the Jets don't play a lot of too high. They may change that up, change their game plan, but generally defenses aren't going to completely change and be absolutely opposite of their actual, core game plan. But it's possible. But if they don't, this is a good matchup for a bounce back for Cincinnati. 6-point favorites here. The Jets are 32nd, so dead last in passing defense. And what do we got here? 20th against the quarterback, 16th against the wide receiver, 20th against the tight end. So I'm not really interested in Cincinnati tight ends here, but if you want to get some low ownership, I don't think Burrow's going to be super low owned, but he's going to be lower owned than Cousins. He's going to be 6th or 7th in ownership, I would guess. So there is some leverage spot there for sure off of Cousins. I never trust Kirk Cousins really, so I'm going to be probably leveraging off of him today. So that shows you I am not a homer whatsoever when it comes to DFS. I threw enough money away as a homer early on in DFS, being a Vikings fan, so I just don't do that anymore. There's more downside, I think, to a high-owned Kirk Cousins. It kind of felt like years ago, like when DFS PGA, I'm going to correlate here, Kevin Na chalk weeks, when Kevin Na is going to be the highest-owned player in PGA. That is just a disaster waiting to happen. I'm talking like 4 or 5 years ago. Kevin Na is a lot better player now, but that's kind of the way I correlate it. All right, so top of the wide receiver board, like I talked about, Kupp, Jefferson is going to see some ownership. Diggs is going to be the highest owned. Monroe, St. Brown, probably right there with Diggs as the top 2 highest owned. So there is a lot of leverage spots here for GPP at the wide receiver position. Devontae Adams, like I talked about, probably going to get back. He's going to get – I'm just going to go ahead and say he's going to have a bounce back game. Jamar Chase has got upside versus the Jets' bad secondary. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle in that Miami-Buffalo game, I don't think are going to be top 5 in ownership. Maybe they will be because a lot of people are going to be on Allen and Diggs and want to run it back with one of those two. Probably Waddle a little bit higher owned because of a little bit of a discount. I think Michael Pittman comes in. He's back in the lineup today for Indy. I hate Matt Ryan. In terms of that, kind of pivots me over to PrizePicks, looking at interception props. Yeah. Matt Ryan's name came up, so we're going to talk interceptions. I just love that these lines are at half an interception. So when you see a game script where I think Kansas City maybe not blow them out, but if it does turn out to be a blowout here, that means Matt Ryan's going to be throwing 40 to 50 times again. And whenever that happens, he's already thrown 3 interceptions, 2 in one game, 1 in the other game. I just think it's really good odds of him throwing an interception. So that's going to be one of my PrizePicks plays here today is Matt Ryan throwing an interception. Now, if you've never been on PrizePicks, it's a prop site. So these are all your props for NFL today: passing yards, rushing yards, receiving, pretty much any prop that you can think of over there, and you can pick up to 2, all the way up to 5. So if you pick 2, let's just say we go to passing yards here, and we like Josh Allen over 280. 2 picks, $20, do 3 times your money. If you throw a third pick in, it also gives you a choice of power play or flex play. So flex play means you can get 1 wrong. So if you have 3 picked, you can get 1 wrong. Now your payouts aren't as good, but it does allow you to get 1 wrong and still cash out on your money. If you get 2 right, you still make 25% profit on that. So you can go all the way up to 5 in terms of flex plays. We'll just kind of go less here. I'm just kind of throw this in so I can show you. And if you use promo code Jaeger, you'll get a $100 match bonus $100% match bonus up to $100. So if you go at $100, they're going to give you $100 by using promo code Jaeger. So make sure to go check that out as well. It correlates. I've been betting a lot of props lately. I've been keeping track. So I got that bet tracking tab. I'm betting games as well as props. I keep separate. Got the units and everything, tracking the units and all that stuff. So if you want to see that, make sure to hit me up in DM or in the Jagerbomb Sportsbook channel. Okay, so Pittman is back. I like that spot as well. Mike Williams, I was really high on early in the week, but we're not really completely sure on Herbert yet. I believe that Charger game is in the afternoon. So this just makes it a very interesting, or is that an early game? Let's just go have a look here on DraftKings. Usually an afternoon game with them. Yeah, so it's an afternoon game. So playing the full slate, you're really going to have to make those decisions early. I think Williams' ownership is going to start to come down just because of that Herbert news. He's got cracked cartilage in his ribs, which probably just means he has cracked ribs. He looked very hurt last week, just kind of throwing the ball looked very uncomfortable for him. That's going to lower the upside of Mike Williams for sure, because you want those big plays with Mike Williams. And he's already a guy that's going to give you like 4 fantasy points or 30. So that just lowers him down in my rankings over in the top targets tab. He was like 4 or 5, somewhere in there, with Keenan Allen projected to be out. A lot lower on him. I think a spot we can go in terms of running back with that news, probably going to be a little bit lower owned here as well, is Austin Eckler. He's right up here in the high price. People aren't going to want to pay up for him in that game either. They're a favorite, pretty good. No, I'm not going to say a really good matchup, but he should see, I'm going to say 5 to 8 targets, probably in terms of total, probably in that 13 to 16 rushes. So he's got the upside of 20 to 25 touches for sure in this game, especially if he sees a lot of dump offs. He hasn't got the touchdowns yet this year, was getting a ton of those last year. So I think he can kind of get back on track, and probably going to be a little bit lower owned there on Eckler as well. So that's a spot I like going to. Deandre Swift is a full go here. I've seen on Twitter this morning, he is expected to get a full workload against Minnesota. Minnesota's run D. Minnesota's dead last in rushing defense here. So this is a smash spot. We know he's a big play running back, so he could see some little bit lower ownership as well. Kind of sitting. Another one that I like in terms of a little bit lower ownership is Clyde Edwards-Hilaire. I think you could pair him with Mahomes. He does get targets in the offense. He has a 10% target share. Got 76 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns already. So I definitely like to see that. He gets some red zone usage here as well in terms of targets. So I think that's very sneaky. Like Mahomes, Kelsey is going to be popular, or not popular, but that's my most popular stack out of that game. I think he can fit in some Juju, although he's more of a possession guy, not really upside. I think Juju's more of a cash wide receiver one-off play. But Hilaire, I think, is going to be low owned, and he could smash as well. I like him over on PrizePicks for rushing yards. 45.5. I think he can get somewhere in that 55 to 60 range. So there's another one. There's 2 picks for PrizePicks that I like there. Going down the board, David Montgomery is going to be popular. Damien Harris was banged up a little bit. He's not the guy that's going to be catching the passes. He does have 5 targets, 4 receptions so far this year, but I think Ramondre Stevenson is the guy that we want if we're targeting that New England backfield today. Talked about Miles Sanders as a low-owned running back that I like here. Now, people were worried early on. There's a lot of running backs. Week 1, there was 4 different players that scored a rushing touchdown. That includes Jalen Hurts. I'm not concerned at all about that. It showed that last week. I'm just going to pull up some stats here. Rushing stats for Philly. In terms of snaps of the running backs, Miles Sanders has 41 snaps. Boston Scott's got 11 and Gainwell's got 9. So he's like commanding the backfield now. He's kind of taken over there. In terms of rushing attempts, it's 30 to 8 to 7 and those 3 running backs. And then in terms of targets, there hasn't been a lot of dump offs, I guess, and that's because Hurts runs a lot. But Gainwell's got 6 targets, 3 catches. Sanders has 5 targets, 5 catches, and Boston Scott's got 1 and 1. So I'm really on Miles Sanders kind of taking over this backfield. It's the Miles Sanders Hurts show. I think you can pair them together as well. I don't think it has to be a direct pivot off of, say, A.J. Brown and Hurts, because they don't throw a lot. They run a lot. So if you just want to take your Hurts chalk and maybe add a running back that isn't going to be low owned in that stack, pairing Sanders and Hurts together, I think makes a lot of sense there. Do you like the Jets running backs? Michael Carter. Yeah, I'm going down the list here. Michael Carter of the 2. Hall's going to be cheaper, or sorry, not cheaper. He's going to be lower owned, but I feel that Michael Carter is the one that we want to have. He's already got 14 targets. Like, that is 14% target share. Got caught 12 of them. Sorry, blah, blah, blah. He's caught 12 of 14 targets, which is awesome to see. He's got 3 in terms of total opportunities. 3. If we got Breece Hall, is he on here? I will search him out. They're both getting red zone usage, which is good to see for both of them. But I just see that, well, Carter's my favorite of those ones. I don't think the game script's completely there. I think this is a game where Cincinnati kind of blows them out and he's a get-right spot for Cincinnati, if you will. I'm debating taking Cincy as a -6 here. Probably just more in a parlay, not as a one-off bet. What I do is pick 3 to 4 games. I bet them 1 unit, which my units for game betting is $25. And then for props, I'm usually in that $10 range is my unit. But and then what I'll do is I'll take my 2 or 3 favorite games and I'll parlay them together at a half unit. And then I'll take maybe at a quarter unit and I will parlay probably 6 or 7 games together as well, just to kind of build my betting card out that way. So Cincinnati is definitely on that big parlay list, not on my main parlay or my main bets list, but I think this is a get-right spot for Cincinnati today, and I think they could definitely hit their over in terms of 25 points, like a 28-13 type game, something like that. Going to defenses, which I haven't touched on yet, no one wants to pay up for Cincinnati. They were super chalk last week and burned everyone. Talked about that a little bit. I was fine with them in cash games being high owned, but for GPPs, I'm always looking to pivot away from the chalk defenses just because there is so much variance here. Well, this week I'm back on the Bengals, who were much more expensive, especially on DraftKings. No one wants to play them because of last week. I think they come in probably 4 or 5% owned, maybe even less. And if you look at the stats here, they have the 9th best D-line versus the 22nd O-line of the Jets. That's a +13 differential. There's a lot of differentials that we can look at here in terms of D-line versus O-line. And I think they're a GPP defense that I like today. Now, other defenses that I do like here, I like the Eagles versus Washington. They haven't really got their sacks yet, but Washington's D-line, or O-line, which ranks 19th, has allowed 6 sacks so far, 4 turnovers. I think Philly can get there on Washington today, and it's against Carson Wentz too. We talked about last week. You can play Carson Wentz. You can also play the opposition defense in the same lineup. It's absolutely crazy how many times he plays like shit to start the game, throws 2 picks, fumbles the ball, gets sacked 2 or 3 times, and then comes back and throws for 300 plus yards. He's done it 2 weeks in a row now. And he ends up getting there for points per dollar value as well. It's absolutely incredible. So I think I'm not playing Wentz this week. I'll get that out of the way right now, but I do like Philly's defense because I can see Carson Wentz just being Carson Wentz again. So that's one spot. 2,900 is a really good price. 4K is actually a pretty good price on FanDuel here as well. Seattle versus Atlanta. That's the 8th best D-line versus the 20th O-line for Atlanta. Now, the only thing that Atlanta's got 5 turnovers so far. Seattle's not really generating a lot of turnovers or a lot of sacks. They're blitzing about 24% of the time here. Oh, we're back. Sorry, Mondo. Now, speaking of that, you asked about free optimizers. I don't know of any free optimizers. I know you can go and get a free trial over at DFSR, 7-day trial. I think that we got on right now over at DFSR optimizer. Other than that, I know FanShare as well, but it's not free. There's subscription there. Now, the projections on the cheat sheet formulated from the data on the sheet. Somewhat. Not really. It mostly comes from the DFSR projections is where these projections are pulling from on the sheet, and that is left of the, I see it's not popping up here on the video. So you can get those over on the members only sheet. You'll see the DK FanDuel projections. So those are mainly based, like 95% based off of the DFSR projections, and that takes into account, obviously, Vegas totals, previous performances, preseason projections are mixed in there, the defenses they're facing, things like that. So that's where that comes from, those projections. And then I just kind of bake in a little bit of my own, kind of tweak them a little bit, but that's only like 5% if I just don't agree with the DFSR projection, which I don't take care of the DFSR projections. I do on the MLB side. I don't do the NFL projections. I help out a little bit, content mostly on the NFL side of things, but that's where I will adjust if I just don't agree. And me and Doug generally agree on most things, but sometimes we don't. So sorry it took so long to answer that question that you asked in chat right before the video went live, but thanks for tuning in, Mondo. I really appreciate it. Other defenses that I like here, really high on Carolina. New Orleans has already allowed 10 sacks this season, which I really like. Kind of same reason I would maybe want to target the Jets, but again, I think this is a get right spot for Cincinnati, so I am off the Jets. I think the Jets are going to be popular because of Cincinnati's terrible O-line, but I think that may change today. So that is the chalk defense. I don't know exactly. I haven't looked at the ownership projections on the defenses yet, but I believe the Jets are going to be high owned because of the just how many sacks that Cincinnati's given up this year. So I'm actually going to pivot to Carolina against New Orleans. You got the 7th best D-line versus the 27th best O-line in terms of pass protection. That's a plus 20. That is 3rd best differential here on this slate. Again, New Orleans has allowed 10 sacks. It's Jameis Winston. He's not 100%. He is going to play today, but he is not 100%. So the video's freezing there for some. Sorry about that. I'm not sure if the internet's kicking out or what. Here, CMC generally has good games against New Orleans. Yeah, I think Carolina, it's a Carolina defense, and McCaffrey is something that I'm definitely stacking together. Raiders and Atlanta defense. So Atlanta versus Seattle. Their D-line just is not generating a lot of pass rush. 29th in DVOA defensive line for the pass rush. They do have 5 sacks. Seattle's given up 4. Some turnovers there, 4 takeaways, and the opponent's given away the ball 4 times. Just not one that I'm going to. I think it's fine. I think that's a spot you can go to. Again, defense is there's a ton of variance in terms of defense, so I am totally fine. Just as long as in GPPs you're not going with the chalk. There's just so much leverage in going away from the chalk in terms of defenses. And then the other one you had asked about was the Raiders. Raiders versus Tennessee. So they're just not getting sacks whatsoever. But this is one where I think we could see some positive regression. They've only got 1 sack in the season, but they're the 11th best D-line in terms of pass rushing. It's a mediocre middle of the pack O-line for Tennessee. I do like the Raiders in this game, though. The Raiders -2 is something that I'm definitely looking at in my parlays. Almost into one of my main bets today. I think the Raiders can get there versus Tennessee. So I would be totally fine pivoting off the Jets and going to the Raiders here on defense. And then finally, I'm going to touch on some tight ends, answer a few more questions if you guys have it. Sorry about the video freezing. I'm not sure exactly what's happening in terms of the internet. I will get that fixed going into the NASCAR video, which, by the way, you can tune in at 1:15 p.m. Eastern. That's 11:15 local time for me. You can come and check that out and talk some NASCAR. I will try and get that internet fixed here a little bit for that. Okay, so talked about Travis Kelce. I talked about Darren Waller. Those are my two pay ups. So I think Mark Andrews could also be a pivot play here. I don't think he's going to get too popular because I think Kyle Pitts is going to see some ownership, which I don't quite. If he's going to see ownership, I'm fading him. Drake London's taken over as the Atlanta top pass catching option there. They've talked about, the coaching staff has talked about, that's just not the game plan, using Kyle Pitts as a top target guy. So I'm just going to trust the coaches there because that's what it's shown. He's in there blocking quite a bit. And he's not really running those big routes like we've seen that big catch in preseason. That's just not happening. So until we see that, I'm not taking high ownership on Kyle Pitts. I think Goddard's going to see some ownership. Zach Ertz could possibly. Highest owned tight ends, probably Tyler Higbee. That's going to be cash game for sure. 4,500. I just love that price. Going down a little bit further, TJ Hawkinson in the Minnesota Detroit stack. Dawson Knox in the Buffalo Miami game stack going to mix in as well. Hayden Hurst for Cincinnati. I didn't really want to mix in Cincinnati, but he's seen 15 targets. Like, you start getting cheap here and you look for that volume when you're coming down here in the sub 4K range. He's got 15 targets. Same with Tyler Conklin. I'm not excited about either of those tight ends in that game, but they've got a combined 31 targets and 20 catches through 2 weeks. They're also getting some red zone usage. Not a whole lot, not enough to get me excited. And I think the pivot in this range is going to be Ingram with Jacksonville. Going even cheaper, Logan Thomas is still super cheap. It took a lot to get him there last week, but again, Washington's probably throwing a lot. Philly is terrible against the tight end, 25th in fantasy points against tight end, and he's seen 11 targets for 3,500. I'm not interested on FanDuel at 5,400, but on DraftKings, I am definitely interested here. Going down a little bit further, Irv Smith, because he played on Monday Night Football, he missed that probably 70-yard touchdown catch, which could have changed the whole entire game. But because those Monday night games are being played after the pricing is already out for the following week, he is still 3,100. He's probably more accurately priced in the, I would say, at least the high 3, probably in the low 4K range, with like the Hurst Conklin is probably where he should be priced. So 3,100, he's probably going to be, with Higbee, probably the most popular tight end, high total. They're a favorite. He's got 10 targets so far. Like I said, he missed that big one last week, that big play, and that's what people are going to remember from Monday night, especially when you're talking primetime. Everyone is watching the primetime game. It's the only game on. So I think he's going to get some ownership. Juwan Johnson, I'm still interested in. 12 targets down here for 2,900 is excellent price. Talked about Disley. Way down here, yeah, 5 targets. He's caught all 5 of them. It's just, there's just not a lot of upside there with Disley. I mean, I like the other punts way more. That's just 3 for 3. He did catch that touchdown. Without that touchdown, though, you're looking at about 5-6 points, which is getting you 2-3x, but that's not going to win you in GPP if we're talking GPPs here. So he would really need to get there and get that touchdown again, because he's not getting a lot of targets in the offense. It is a good matchup, though. Atlanta is terrible against tight end. So I'm not going to say absolutely no. He's not going to be there for me this week. Okay, Mondo asked, trying to be different in GPP, thinking Wentz, Dotson, bring it back with Miles Sanders. That's definitely going to get you off the chalk this week. Those garbage time points, that's a good Miles Sanders gets there with his 80-plus yards and 1 to 2 touchdowns. That gets you leverage off of, say, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, and then bringing it back with Wentz, who's going to be low owned. Dotson, I think Dotson's going to be higher owned. Now, I talked about Dotson a little bit yesterday in chat. He needs the touchdowns to get there. Curtis Samuel is out targeting him. Philly's a good passing defense. So I'm more on Samuel, who has a lower A dot, which means he's catching the ball closer to the line of scrimmage, really good in terms of like yak yards. So I'm definitely, but Dotson can get there, and that is, that combination right there. You can go and load up. That's cheap. So you'll be able to go and load up with some really high owned guys. Yep, talked about Dawson Knox. I'm definitely going to include him in Miami Buffalo stacks. I believe he is good to go in terms of injuries. So I will check that out. Yeah, Kenny just posted in chat that Saber Sims reset their free trial. So you can go over there and you can use Saber Sims Optimizer. They got a free trial going on now. Make sure reach out to Kenny or Dane in chat. They've both used Saber Sim a ton. They can help you out in terms of making those rules and stuff. It's a very advanced optimizer. And if you're just going in and hitting go, I don't think you're really utilizing the optimizer the way you should be. So we definitely hit them up on how to use, the rules and stuff that you can make. Where say you're stacking a quarterback, and you can make a rule where you only want one of his pass catchers, or maybe only max two of his pass catchers. You can set those rules to really help you out there. Okay, go through a few more injuries here, and then I'm going to take off, build my lineups, and be back for the NASCAR show. Value wide receivers that I wanted to talk about here. Kyle Phillips is out for Tennessee. Yes. So I think this really brings in Traylon Burks. I haven't talked about him yet. So definitely going to be on him. With Hunter Renfrow out, I also like, is it Mac Hollins? I don't even know the guy's name. Yeah, Mac Hollins. Seen good target share last week with Renfrow in. I think he kind of runs as probably the number 2 wide receiver, number 3 pass catching option behind Adams and Waller. Very, very low price. I'm going to have some to him. Alvin Kamara is confirmed in. Gabe Davis is confirmed in. Jameis Winston is active, like we talked about. Buffalo's whole entire defense is out. It's which makes me like the game stack of like Tua, Waddle, and Tyreek, because they're not catching as much as the long bombs downfield, but they're really good at yak yards, but they can catch those long bombs as well. So keep that in mind. Jacoby Myers is out. Talked about that. Dawson Knox, there we go, is active for week 3. So that's good to see. Some other notable actives that we talked about maybe being questionable. We talked about Dobbins. We talked about Josh Jacobs. He's in. DeAndre Swift, TJ Hawkinson. Healthy scratches, Ronald Jones, Terrence Marshall, Kenyon Drake, not really relevant there. So that kind of covers it. So we don't, favorite cheap defense, sub 2,400 on DK. That's tough. Now, Arizona's getting sacks. They've got, Rams have given up 8 sacks. Arizona isn't sacking a lot. Rams are probably going to be throwing a lot, so Arizona could be possible. I don't like Washington because Philly runs a lot. Jacksonville's probably my favorite there. Especially if Herbert plays, he's going to be either way. If Herbert plays and he's not 100%, or if Herbert's out, I think Jacksonville could make some sense there. They've got 6 sacks on the season and 6 turnovers. So the O-line, D-line stuff doesn't really match up, but in terms, they blitz 31% of the time as well. So Jacksonville would be my favorite, sub 2,400 on DK. They might even be popular with the news. How about Knox alone? No, not really into Knox as a one-off here. But yeah, Jacksonville could end up being the chalk defense, along with, the Jets, and Jacksonville could be your top 2 high-owned defenses in that low range today. Cash core. Yeah, Chubb was awesome last week, so I think you got to go Montgomery. Want to not go Montgomery and then him go off. It's a good matchup. He's getting all the volume. Herbert has kind of been, that was the big talk preseason, is Herbert going to get all the volume or going to cut into his volume? It hasn't happened yet. So David Montgomery, I think you got to go worrisome. And one of my GPP stacks that I talked about this week, people are talking about this in cash, and I think it's absolutely crazy. I'm just going to share my GPP article here with you real quick for those that haven't read it yet. This is my DFSR. I just shared that link there. That is my GPP article over on DFSR. Was Mariota and Drake London. Absolutely love that for GPP. People are talking about using Mariota in cash. I can see it because he does give you a little bit of rushing floor. I can't get there. I just can't get there for cash. That's just, after the Derek Carr broke my heart last week in cash games, I don't think I can go to another cheap guy to try and, stack the studs is kind of why people go the cheap quarterback. I think Jalen Hurts makes a lot of sense. I think that's probably where you go or pay right up for Josh Allen. But Hurts gets you that $600 discount here. A lot of people might even go to Kirk Cousins. I'm just not doing that either. Stafford makes sense at $6,500. Yeah, let's do that. So let's go Stafford. And we talked about Higbee already. Stafford and Higbee and Montgomery. Defense, like we talked about, I think Jaguars, just to save some money in cash games. I think that makes a lot of sense. If you want a cheap guy, I really am into Matt Collins for salary savings, and that allows you to go up and pay up for one of these top. I think you got to go Diggs here at his price. He's just massively underpriced. So that combination right there gives you 6,600 left over. And if you aren't even into Higbee, you can go down to Irv Smith at 3,100. Leaves you 7,000 left over. So I'm kind of not decided on my tight end yet. Higbee is kind of there for me right now just because of the volume. Irv Smith could have another 2-target dud for you. So I'm just not into that. For safety, Higbee has been there each and every week. 11 and 9 targets, caught 5 and 7. Even that 40 yards there gets you 9 points. That's 2x. So I can take 2x for my tight end for sure. I know Irv Smith only needs 6 points, but it's not guaranteed he's going to give you those 6 points. You got Jefferson, you got Cook, you got Thielen, you got Osborne. There's too many other options. Whereas Higbee kind of seems like the number 2 after Cup, to be honest with you. And I think Allen Robinson kind of falls into the 3. And then you got the run game in there as well after those guys. So definitely there. You don't even have to go Matt Collins, but if you put in one punt wide receiver, because you got 3 wide receiver spots, you can even go. I mean, you want to look at some other players here. That would be my core right there. But who else did we talk about here in this mid-range? Sanders, not really for cash. I think we probably would go up at this point, and I would either be paying up for Dalvin Cook or Joe Mixon. I like Joe Mixon there as well. So that's kind of my cash core if you guys want to use that. Definitely some of my favorite plays. Maybe take Hollins out, and it still leaves you 5,700. There's some cheap running backs that definitely make that work there this week. So that would be the cash core. Opinion on Swift. I love stacking the Minnesota-Detroit game. I'll have, if I'm using Swift, probably in a game script where he's kind of game script irrelevant. It doesn't matter what the game script is, but where I'm using Swift the most, I'm probably going to end up having the Kirk Cousins and Jefferson and Irv Smith stacks. If you want to get away from Jefferson and save some money, you go Kirk Cousins, Thielen. Irv Smith gives you the value wide receiver or the value pass catchers for Minnesota, gives you the smash spot for Swift. It also gets you away from Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I will have a lot of combinations of the Detroit-Minnesota game. I think that makes a lot of sense. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I really appreciate it. Let's go get some green screens. I'll see you in winning picks after the games tonight, and I will see you back for the NASCAR show in about 2 hours. Cheers, everyone.